Good afternoon, everybody. This is Brad Blazar, the host of the Learn to Soar Network. I'm here today in the studios of Real News with Jeff Crilly. Jeff is the founder of Real News PR, and I am so excited. Jeff actually heard about me, what I was doing, as well as the book, and wanted to bring me in so we could actually chat this afternoon.
I'm so thrilled, and congratulations on the new book. I mean, this is even an author's copy, so this is fresh off the printer. Talk to us about On the Wings of Eagles, Learning to Soar in Life. What made you write the book?
You know, the book was really a work that has taken place over many years. I've truly been blessed to have met personally or have heard speak at various events a number of the greatest leaders in sports, business, and politics. People like Joe Namath, Rudy Rudiger, former President George W. Bush, Irving Magic Johnson. And each one of these individuals, of course, being as great as they are, has an underlying message and theme. And those themes and messages typically center around things like don't give up on your dreams, be totally committed, break through the obstacles. And so one day while I was in my office, Jeff, I was looking at this large stack of notes, and I said, you know, I bet you that would really make a great outline for a wonderful book, and started the project about 2 years ago.
All right, well, let's talk about one of those names, Joe Namath. What did you talk about with Joe?
Broadway Joe. I had the pleasure of meeting Joe Namath at an industry event a couple of years ago, and what a great guy. Number one, of course, just a great NFL legend, but the thing that I really took away from Joe Namath more than anything, he is a very personable, humble person that just gives back. You know, I've been to so many of these that when they have a receiving line where you can walk up and shake their hand and have your picture taken, they rush from one person to the next. And the thing that really resonated with me about Joe Namath is he took a few minutes to sit down and actually chat with each and every person there, sign an autograph, and really make it a personal moment for you.
I love that story. How about Magic Johnson?
Magic's a great guy, you know, just an absolute legend. The thing about Magic that really a lot of people don't know, because he's not only a phenomenal legend in the NBA, but also just a tremendous business person today, is his upbringings and where he actually came from. Magic came up basically, in a very poor family. His parents, of course, worked 2 jobs, and he saw, of course, basketball as a way out of the ghetto and turned his life around. And as they say, the rest is history.
I love it. Well, you have coined a phrase and actually trademarked beliefology. So what is the art of beliefology?
The art of beliefology is really something that I've developed to explain to people that as you grow up, you develop beliefs about yourself, about what you can do, about what you can become. Some of those beliefs are very positive, and unfortunately some of them are very limiting. And so what I try to do throughout the course of the book is provide basically a path for people to explain to them that you have the ability to change these beliefs and overcome these beliefs and really attain the level of success that you want in life. And so that's why I decided to trademark the art of beliefology.
And you yourself experienced success at a young age. You were 23 when you started doing big oil deals, right?
Correct. Yes. I was a student actually studying architecture at the University of Texas, responded to an ad, and went to work for a small oil company raising capital for drilling programs. And over the course of a few years, decided to go out and venture on my own. The ripe old age of 23, started a company. We grew that company over close to a decade, drilling for oil and gas in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. And then, of course, oil prices collapsed due to OPEC. The tax laws changed, and I was forced into a different industry, which has been tremendous for the last 25 years. And that is essentially assisting other companies raising capital for themselves.
That's outstanding. I imagine that forced change, because oil industry, feast or famine, that forced change probably at the time felt strange, but it was a blessing, wasn't it?
It was a true blessing. You know, in the book, one of the things I talk about is pain and pleasure. Anthony Robbins, another great visionary, speaks to pain and pleasure and says that you really have to understand that those are the two things where most decisions are actually made. What a lot of people don't understand is we actually have three brains. And the one part of the brain that is the most ancient and primitive is called the reptilian brain. It's something that we all have in common with reptiles, and that's the part of the brain really that is the fight or flight syndrome, but it also drives the pain and pleasure syndrome. And so what Tony Robbins says, and of course what I firmly believe as well, is that your decisions are largely made around pain and pleasure, and I get to a very, very painful part of my life. I lost my business. I had to shut the doors, had to let go of all my employees, and that created the leverage because as I looked out for the life I wanted to have, and the vision of what I wanted to create, that guided me in the right direction to where I am today.
And you probably wouldn't have the book if it wasn't for that early setback.
Correct.
Yeah. Well,
Correct.
I can't wait to read it. This is outstanding, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You know, this afternoon, I'm here today to bring on a tremendous individual that really speaks to what we discuss in the book. This young man has accomplished what many people would view as the impossible. There is something called the Ocean 7, which I was introduced a few years ago, and this is the equivalent to climbing the 7 summits or the tallest mountains. The only difference is the Ocean 7 is swimming essentially the 7 longest endurance swims around the world. Darren Miller is the only person to have actually accomplished this, where he completed each one of the 7 swims and did it on the first attempt. So welcome to our show, Darren Miller. How are you today?
Brad, great to be here. Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome. You know, you have an amazing story. You and I have got to know each other a little bit in the ensuing weeks, and what really amazes me is you were not always the fit, trim, endurance swimmer that you became. Can you tell us how you actually got started as an endurance swimmer and what drove that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got started when I graduated college, 2005. I graduated in broadcast journalism. And it's got a point in my life, a lot of people do, similar to what some of the struggles you talked about. I was going through that dark period in my life. There was a lot of things that I was engaged in that I'm not proud of. But you know what, at the end of the day, it's how you come through that darkness and how you overcome it. And I found my path to that through endurance athletics. I started running marathons at roughly about 265, 270 pounds. About 3 months after I sat up from a bench press, after probably smoking about a pack of cigarettes a day and, drinking a little bit too much. And I remember sitting up and thinking, what am I doing right now? You know, I'm just struggling with a lot of challenges. But a friend of mine basically asked me to go and start running with her at the local track. And I started running a couple laps here and there, started running a mile here and there. And ultimately, I never really ran anything other than that dreaded 1 mile we all had to do in gym class, right? But what it taught me was I started feeling a lot better. I started feeling better about myself. My endorphins were just ripping, and just started to lose some weight. I felt great. And so some people, they go and maybe do a 5K or a half marathon or something like that, but I just jumped right into the full marathon. And I remember going to the starting line a couple months after I started running. And I get there at 265 pounds. And I remember looking around thinking I could probably eat the people around me, at the starting line. But ultimately what it taught me that day, after running 26 miles up and over a large mountain, again, weighing about 265 pounds and 96-degree temperatures, was I was capable of doing things that I didn't think were possible. So I get so fired up when people say I could never do that, right? I was just running yesterday, and some guy was walking around the lake with a pack of cigarettes in his hand and said, "Oh, God bless you. I could never do that." And I so badly, every time somebody does that, I just want to turn around and talk to them and tell them about the challenges that I had and what I came through, because each and every one of us have challenges, right? But we got to find that passion in our life to get us through it. So I ran that first marathon, and then after that, I set my sights on, I wanted to qualify for Boston. Most people know the Boston Marathon is a pretty competitive running race, right? And it's difficult to get into. You had to run an average pace of roughly about 7 minutes for 26 miles. My goal was to break right around a 3:05 in order to get into that. So I had to drop about an hour and a half off my first marathon. Over the next 9 months, I ran 2 more races. I lost about 80 pounds, and I just felt tremendous. After I qualified for Boston that year in 2009 at Pittsburgh, I set my sights on what's called the ultra marathon. The ultra marathon is anything in excess of 26.2. So I signed up for a 50-mile trail race in Ohio about 4 weeks after I completed Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, I fractured a bone in my right foot, which, against my surgeon's wishes, I went and ran that 50 miles. And then when I was done, I was in a whole nother level of pain, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of person I am. I'm a little extreme, but I love it. And after that, I was kind of like, now what, right? Now, what next am I going to be able to do in my life? And after I ran that ultra, I remember getting home and somebody, I don't remember where I found it at, somebody gave me a book, and it was by Lynn Cox, and she was an open water swimmer, a young open water swimmer in the 70s and 80s that just went around the world and did some amazing swims. I mean, she set the English Channel record at 15 or 16 years old. And I thought that was really profound. But there was one chapter that I truly loved, and it was her talking about how she swam between Little Domian and Big Domian. There were two islands that separated the United States from Russia in 1987. It took her 11 years to get this swim planned. It was a very short distance, but extremely cold water that she did in wearing her just standard swimming outfit, right? But when she completed it, what I loved was that Bush and Gorbachev actually mentioned her as a catalyst in a peace treaty that they signed not long after that. And I was like, wow, the sport of swimming helped change the world. Now, I grew up a swimmer, but I was the kind of swimmer that just followed the black line on the bottom of the pool, swimming 50 freestyle, 100 butterfly. I never dreamed of doing anything open water, right? But after running these distances that I did, I thought, well, if I could run 26 miles, I could probably swim 26 miles. So I was out with a friend one night, Kathy Cartier-Mell, and she was talking about her father who had passed away from an open heart surgery, and she wanted to do something to honor his memory. And I randomly just blurted out, hey, pay for me to go over and swim the channel. We'll raise money in honor of your dad for a specific cause. We came together. We started the Forever Fund at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. This goes to help families afford the small costs of while they're caring for their child during their most difficult battle. And that goes to prescription drugs, food, lodging, just the small things, right? We have paid mortgages. We've paid utility bills, whatever we can do to help ease the burden of those families. So long story short, after a lot of training that coming year, about 9 months after I signed up for it, I found myself at Shakespeare Beach off the coast of Dover, England on July 19th, 2010. It's crazy. It's almost been 10 years. But I remember being there and I started swimming that day. And I thought, how did I get here? I'm taking a stroke and I look behind me and I can see the white cliffs of Dover. I look in front of me and I can see Cap Grenade, France, way in the distance. It was a distance of about 21 miles. But I remember being about halfway across that channel and just having an overwhelming sense of, this is just amazing right now. And it's really hard to put that into words. But, we powered through it that day, 12 hours and 4 minutes. And I was telling you earlier, the fun part about that I'll never forget is I arrive in France and people always think that, you swim the English Channel, there's media crews and, it's not like that. I finished, I looked over, I saw a guy that was fishing. He kind of looked at me, wound up his line a little bit more, turned around and walked away, So that was my finish line. Me shivering on the coast of France for a couple of minutes. We took a picture or two, and then my friend and I had to swim back out to the boat. She kind of hopped in the water with me to take a picture. And then the rest is history. We took 2.5 hour boat ride back to England. And that was the start of what would become the Ocean 7.
Amazing journey. Being an endurance athlete myself and having done a few marathons, half marathons, and then, of course, working into triathlons as a swimmer, of course, not to the extent you are, I understand what it takes to stick to a goal and work through pain. In the book, I speak to pain and pleasure and explain to people that really you get to a certain low in life where you really just have to change. And you, like you did, just woke up one day and said, I am sick of myself at 265 pounds. I need something better. I deserve something better. And, of course, that's what really drove you to become a runner initially. And then ultimately, of course, one of the world's greatest endurance swimmers. You and I have spoken briefly about, the things you think about. What I call the self-talk. When you're 10 miles out in the middle of the sea and there's breaking waves and there's whitecaps, what do you focus on during a swim to get you through it, to ultimately get you to the other shore? What gets you through those difficult, tough, challenging times as you're out there basically alone?
Sure, absolutely. As part of my speaking business, I travel the country and I address industries across the board. really defining and focusing on leadership, focusing on effective time management, forging mental tenacity, positive self-talk, all of these, what I call essentials. So it's called the Forever Essentials. Mm-hmm. Each one, FOREVER, stands for a specific focus of business, philanthropy, and endurance athletics. So I kind of combine what I've learned in each of those mediums as 15 years in financial sales, as over a decade running my own charity, and also as an endurance athlete. What I've learned from traveling all over the world is all of those 7 essentials, and I tie those into whatever specific business that I'm speaking to. But ultimately, the number one question that I always get is, what do you focus on? What do you visualize? Okay. And visualization to me is absolutely everything. You cannot be successful at something if you do not see yourself as successful. And what that basically means is anything from focusing on that start, what your every step that you're going through as you approach the start, as you jump off the boat, as you clear the water line and start on the beach, how you want to feel after 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, and then seeing yourself successful on the other side. That's such a important fact of business and life, no matter what you're pursuing. Whether you want to be a 100-mile foot runner or an English Channel swimmer like myself, that's awesome. But each and every one of us have a passion in life, an opportunity to take what we have and make the world a better place. And that's what this has all been about. Every step or every stroke I've taken has been to raise money for these kids and to inspire other people to say, find that English Channel in your life, find that 100-mile foot race in your life and go at it. But the number one thing that I focus on is always, it's a concept that I'm writing a book around right now, and it's called The Third Boat. In endurance swimming, or we call marathon swimming, you have typically a guide boat that has your crew on you. They're feeding you. They're giving you direction at times. The boat has the GPS. That's what you're following. So every time you take a stroke, you see the boat. If it starts to turn this way, you turn this way. It turns that way, you turn that way. So that's how you figure out how you get across. But then sometimes you'll have maybe a paddleboard or a kayak in the water next to you. So that's the second boat. Mm-hmm. The third boat is the boat that nobody sees, okay? And that's all a part of the visualization, because there are times when my body tells me to shut down over and over and over again. Going through that pain, people say, oh, you must be really – it hurts, right? Your body just starts shutting down. It's whether it's the hypothermia, the lack of nutrition at times, just the sheer being able to overcome the elements, right, and moving forward for up to 12, 24 hours at a clip. So how I get through that is I visualize that boat next to me. And when I'm at my lowest point, when I don't feel like I can go any further, I look over and I see the people that inspire me, right? The heroes in my life, whether it was my grandparents who grew up here in Pittsburgh, lack of education. They did the best with everything they've been given in life. They gave back to their community. And really the biggest piece I took from them is not what's in your pocketbook that makes you successful. It's how you treat the world around you and how you better the world around you by using the gifts that you have. That's everything. So I see them on that boat. I see my friend Summer, just a great friend growing up. And long story short, through an act of violence, she was taken from me. And it's somebody that I see over there on that boat at a young age, lost her life when she had the world in front of her. A friend of mine, Jimmy, had an unfortunate drug overdose. Several other people, right? But at the end of the day, when I'm at my lowest and I can't take another stroke, I look over and I see my Uncle Mike, right, who passed from colon cancer, who always taught me don't ever give up no matter what. And I see my grandparents and my friend Summer, right? The people who have passed on that don't have the opportunity right now in this moment to take advantage of everything that they have. To me, I just get hair on the back of my neck, my hair on my arms stand up. I get a few tears in my eyes, and that you get that snarl like Rocky would always talk about, and you just keep pushing forward.
Well,
So
I wish you lots of luck.
At all those times when my body started shutting down, I would look over and I would see them, right? Or if I'm in a running race, I see my grandparents in front of me riding a bike in front of me telling me to keep going, right? It's all about how you visualize the heroes in your life and leveraging their memory and example to propel you forward.
Absolutely. Great story, and I really appreciate that. When I was running as a marathon and as a triathlon athlete, I was doing it much like you for charity as well. I lost my dad over a decade ago to a terrible disease, of course, cancer, and that was the impetus that really got me out and got me going. I would reach out to friends and family. I created a website and basically said, look, why don't you sponsor me? It's not much, a couple bucks every mile. And, when you get 100 people to sponsor you on a marathon where you're running 26.2 miles, it adds up. And we wrote some nice checks to MD Anderson for cancer research. I was able to raise thousands of dollars, and that's what kept me going. In talking to you, and of course in looking at your website and looking at some of the swims, there's a couple of swims that stick out. Of course, one of them is where you slipped on the rocks, actually getting into the water, and banged yourself up pretty bad. You were bruised up, you were bleeding. Which of the 7 swims was the most difficult, the most challenging for you, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. The most difficult one was the Suguru channel. It's spelled Tsugaru, and it's a strait of water that separates Honshu from Hokkaido in northern Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It is only about 16 miles in distance, but the reality is that a lot of people were at that time in 2011. It was a very unknown part of the world. There had only been a few people that are ever successful at swimming it. It wasn't as well known as the English Channel. So when you look at the English Channel, there are probably about, 2,500, 3,000 people, somewhere that number is in there now, since 1875 that have completed the English Channel. When you look at something like the North Channel, per se, that was the culmination of the 7 swims between Ireland and Scotland, that body of water has only been swum by maybe 25 or 30 people. Currently since 1947, right? So this body of water in Japan, I couldn't find much out about it. Whenever I looked into the Ocean 7 and threw my name into the hat in 2009, and then 2010 when I did the first one, the Suguru channel was the one that I couldn't find much on, right? It had only been successfully swum a few times. So with that being said, that was very challenging in that we didn't really know a whole lot about it. Number 2, the language barrier was always a challenge. I was lucky enough to have an excellent ally on my team. Stephen Munatones is actually the open water guru, I'll call him, that has over the years created an excellent blog, The Daily News of Open Water Swimming. He's done so many wonderful things for our community. And he had actually completed the swim back in the early 90s. So he was an excellent source of information. Plus, he actually speaks Japanese as a second language. So that worked out very well. Because when my brother and I got over there, all of a sudden you're thrown into a massive city like Tokyo, trying to find your way around. It's a little challenging, right? But we took the bullet train and we went all the way up north. And we got off, and long story short, we looked out across that channel. The first day we were there, it was a very ominous day. And then the next couple of days, it was nice, but it was very windy out there, and you can never plan for that perfect day. Mother Nature will always throw a wrench into things. And I will say that a lot of it is mental strength to push through and physical strength, but at the end of the day, you have to have a bit of luck. Because I don't care if you're Michael Phelps out there, there are times when you cannot swim across a certain body of water. Sure. So in the Suguru channel that day, we were expecting about an 8-hour swim. And I remember getting out there at the starting line. When I say starting line, it's typically a boat, right? We're on the boat, it's rocking. We had a scout boat in front of us. And then I remember them telling me, okay, you know what? Don't worry about jumping off the boat, going in and clearing the water line, okay? Because in what we do, you have to clear the water line so you're completely out of the water, and then you start on your own, you swim the entire way, and you finish out of the water. You don't get out of the water at any time. Everything you do is in the water, and I mean everything. You're fed in the water, you relieve yourself in the water, the whole 9 yards, right? But that morning was particularly very rough out there, and we were there, and you invest the amount of money that you do for that period of time. And it's kind of just like, you may not get another chance at this. And I was on number 5 of 7, trying to become the first one in the world to complete it, period. But I remember that day being out there and at the starting line, I jumped off the boat and I swam in. And I just remember that, the birds are flying sideways. It's ominous. It's raining. There's wind everywhere. Big ocean caps hitting me from all different directions. But I didn't want anybody to doubt me at starting point. So I climbed out of the water, and I remember looking out across the ocean, and I started to make my way down this rock, and I slipped and fell. And I gashed both my shins, my whole forearm. And I remember looking down, there was blood coming out of my legs. And I looked up and I looked down, and I could hear my brother say, he was yelling, "Be careful," and I'm like, all right, great, thanks. But I remember looking out and just thinking, you know what, I may not get another shot. And I'm already in pain right now prior to going and diving into an ocean, swimming I couldn't even see the other side, right? There was so much fog and clouds and rain. I couldn't even see anything. So I just jumped off and started going.
Sure.
And after about what we expected to be an 8-hour journey, I looked up and I'm nowhere near Hokkaido. 9 hours, 10 hours, how far am I? 5 miles left. 11 hours, how far am I? 5 miles. 12 hours, 5 miles. And I'm like, oh, wow. So long story short, I'm trying to swim north, and I'm basically getting stuck in this eddy that's pushing me directly east. And there was really nothing I could do about it. And I just got this mantra in my head. I just kept thinking, you know what? They just want me to quit. They want me to give up. You know what? And I'm like, no, not doing this. I started thinking about the third boat, started thinking about those people that inspired me and motivated me, and I just kept plugging away. 13 hours in, a large, dark figure swam right below me. I felt very small. And after I remember about 14 hours, they yelled at me. They said, if you're going to do this, you got to start sprinting. Okay. So after 14 hours of just getting beaten in this channel, starting to get really cold, the water temperature's dropping. I'm swimming in a Speedo cap and goggles. I'm starting to get a little chilled. And my tongue is all swollen from the salinity in the ocean. And I just kept plugging away. And long story short, after about 15 hours and 55 minutes, so it was about twice as long as what we expected, I was able to finish on Hokkaido, climb back into the boat. And that was July 10th, 2012. That was hands down the toughest day of my life. But what it taught me, the number one thing it taught me, it was the most difficult day of my life, but it was the best day of my life from the standpoint of I was able to persevere at a time when I was at my absolute lowest. And I know that no matter what the challenges that I'm going through or these kids are going through, what anybody's going through, at the end of the day, when we believe in ourselves, anything is possible.
Absolutely. We've got just a few more minutes. I want to just have you speak briefly in a couple of minutes about a sponsor that became a close personal friend of yours, Pete Doshinas, the folks over there at the Trustmont Financial Group. We've only got about 5 more minutes left, but can you just briefly comment on how instrumental Pete and that group was to you completing the Ocean 7?
No, absolutely. The Trustmont Financial Group, they were and still are a wonderful partner of mine. You know, the quick of it is that after I came back from the English Channel, I was speaking at a Rotary event. I got asked to speak across, different spectrum from high schools to colleges to, the Lions Club to Rotary. And I just loved it. I would Boy Scouts, I'd go out and speak to whoever. Right. And that's how I progressed into my business. But, the beauty of what Pete gave me when I met him that day at the Greensburg Rotary, which I almost did not go to, which is just crazy for me to think about. But I spoke that day. And one thing that he remembers is me telling the story about how I had a 300-gallon cattle trough on my porch, and I would split it with an axe, and I would sit in it in January to build that mental strength, right? To put myself through what I would say is the most disgusting pain possible, which is literally succumbing to purposely giving yourself hypothermia. But I remember telling that story, and he said that was so profound to him. And he reached out to me, I remember the next day, and just said, I want to be a part of this. What is this going to cost? Like, it was like a one-liner. Like, I think he just said, what is this going to cost? Right. So I started tallying up all the additional swims in my head, and I gave him a number, and he basically just said, let's do this. And your immediate reaction is there's no way, right? There's no way that somebody's going to do this for you. But because in my sport, nobody has that. Nobody has that golden ticket to be able to travel and do what they want. So it was an absolute blessing. And that's what made me push so much harder, I know, during all of these, because I didn't know if I was going to get another shot, right? Mm-hmm. And Pete was there for every step of the way to basically pay for all the costs of travel, food, lodging, all that. And that allowed us to raise every dollar that we could through private donations and give it back to the hospital. So, for those remaining 6 swims of the 7, he was an absolute blessing and mentor to have by my side, and just so supportive, him and his team over there and his family. And I cannot thank them enough. So just an absolute wonderful partner. And I know that you had the pleasure of speaking with him, and that's how we connected. So, just how wonderful of a man he is. And like I said, I can't say enough about him, because without him, I wouldn't have accomplished the 7. I would not have met my wife and have 2 beautiful children right now. And at the end of the day, I have so much to be grateful for, and a lot of it is definitely because of him.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. Absolutely inspiring. Most people would look at what you've done, Darren, and just say, absolutely impossible. I could never do that. It could never happen to me. And here you are, living proof that what you set your mind to is certainly possible. Folks, I have a saying, and that is, if you change your beliefs, you change your future. And Darren Miller certainly epitomizes that and more. Folks, go to Amazon, look up the book. You can actually just do an author search, Brad Blazar, Learn to Soar on the Wings of Eagles. Welcome again, Darren Miller, and look for us next time on the Learn to Soar Network. This is Brad Blazar, and signing off. Till next time. Thank you so much.